Welcome to RICO 12. My name is Justin, and I am a child of an all-powerful and all-loving God and a recovering addict, and am blessed to be the host of this meeting and podcast. RICO 12 is an organization with the mission of learning and sharing the similarities of addictions of all kinds, and gaining and sharing tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. We come together from all places, faiths, and backgrounds to gain tools and hope from others who are walking this same path. Speakers from our past meetings have represented so many fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, and we look forward to continuing to add to the diversity of speakers and backgrounds. Today's speaker for the 160th meeting is Sean B., whose topic will be Still and Know God. We will get to his talk in the Q&A afterwards in just a minute, but first for a little bit of business. The RICO 12 family of recovery resources continues to grow and have more and more resources for the addict and the loved ones of those addicted. We recently launched a new service for all addicts and those seeking the solution. It's called RICO 12 Shares. RICO 12 Shares is an open to anyone, anytime, asynchronous, shares-only, unaffiliated 12-step meeting. Lots of descriptions there. All are welcome to record a solution-based share that is uploaded to be part of a short 20-minute recorded recovery meeting available in podcast format anytime, anywhere. To listen to any of the previously 13 recorded meetings so far, or to learn more and record a share of your own, please visit rico12.com/shares, or click on the links in the show notes or the chat that I'll be putting in the chat of the live meeting. There are also a couple of other RICO 12 family resources, recovery resources on the horizon that I'm super excited about, one of which launched last week. It is a collaboration between RICO 12 recovery resources and recoveryguy.org. It's an open big book meeting called The First 164, where the big book will be focused on, and the participants can share their own insights and questions on the first 164 pages of the big book. Longtime big book enthusiast and two-time guest speaker on RICO 12, Robert P., chairs this meeting each Friday at 4:00 p.m. Eastern Time. You are welcome to join in there, and I'll put in the meeting information and the Zoom link and all that stuff in the chat of the live meeting, as well as in the show notes. Other exciting projects are also in the works, with one of them officially slated to start the first week of July. I'm excited about that. I'll give you more details as that's coming up. We're excited to get more of these out into the recovery world. Your donations and subscriptions are making this all possible, as there are costs to build and maintain all of them. On that note, RICO 12 is a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping us working our Step 12 in this manner. We gratefully accept one-time contributions through PayPal and Venmo, and through the links in the chat and the show notes that'll be out there soon. We have also started a new monthly subscription program called RICO 12 Spearheads. To join in and help support these cool projects, please consider donating at rico12.com/support, or click on the link in the chat of the live meeting and show notes of the podcast. We look forward each week to receiving from the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now let's introduce our guest speaker for today, Sean B., who is a first-time RICO 12 speaker, but someone I've gotten to know pretty well over the previous few months. Here's a little bit about Sean. Sean came into the rooms of AA on May 22nd, 2019, after coming to the realization that he was unable to regulate his emotional state without a drink. He quickly recognized there was a large gap between the expectation of where he thought he would be in life and the reality of where he was. While he was able to stay sober for a year, he half measured the steps and didn't make much spiritual progress. On February 27th of 2020, he came into the Spiritual Gangsters fellowship and threw himself into the steps and abandoned himself to God. In that process, he has learned much about addiction, emotional sobriety, and codependency. He has worked with over 30 sponsees and maintained 3 years of sobriety from hard drugs and alcohol. Take it away, Sean. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Justin. It's so great to be here. I'm honored that you asked me to speak and excited for this opportunity. Yeah, so today the title, Be Still and Know God. This is, Justin came up with this title, amazing title. I'm very pleased. So today I'm going to be talking about stillness and the steps and getting to God through that stillness. All right. So the dictionary defines stillness as a state of freedom from a storm or disturbance. And personally, I feel this stormy disturbance was the state I was in pre-recovery. It was a state of fear, anxiety, uncomfortability, lack, lust, discord. It was not pleasant. It's what led me to seek a solution and what led me into these rooms. And now, while stillness is not mentioned directly in the big book, it is mentioned as some synonyms. And I want to start with one, which is quiet. So Justin and I were kind of discussing this the other day. There's two main references of the word quiet in the big book, and they are both referring to a solution. The first one refers to the perceived solution, or what we thought was the solution, and that's the drink. And the second one refers to growing closer to the real solution, which is God, and letting him in. So in the big book on page 22, it says, as matters grow worse, he begins to use a combination of high-powered sedatives and liquor to quiet his nerves so he can go to work, right? So what he's looking to do, he's looking to quiet his nerves through this liquor so that he can attend his job. The second reference, page 176, most of the time, therefore, I did not take the morning drink, which I craved so badly, but instead would fill up on large doses of sedatives to quiet the jitters, which distressed me so terribly. So both of these men, they have an issue. They have jitters, they have nerves, and they can't control them. And the only way they know how to quiet them is by liquor and sedatives. Now, here's the other reference to quiet in the big book, and it's about God. It's about growing closer to that solution. Page 47, I love this line. It says, when we learned that if we were seriously disturbed, our first need was to quiet that disturbance, regardless of who or what we thought caused it. Now, how do we do that? Page 40 of the 12 and 12 tells us, in all times of emotional disturbance or indecision, we can pause, ask for quiet, and in the stillness, simply say, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thy will, not mine, be done. Right? So we ask for it. We ask for the quiet if we don't have it. A few more references on quiet. It says, page 13 in the big book, when in doubt, I was to sit quietly, asking for direction and strength to meet my problems as he would have me. Another one, as we go throughout the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask, again, we ask for the right thought or action. Now, quiet is not mentioned there, but anytime I see the word pause, I get still, I get quiet, because again, that's a synonym. That's what we should be doing in that moment. There's one more mention in the 12 and 12, and it was a pastime. It's a new pastime of mine. It says, many of us like the experience of an occasional retreat from the outside world where we can quiet down for an undisturbed day or so of self-overhaul and meditation. Now, previously, when I wanted to quiet down and have an undisturbed day, I turned to a whiskey shot and a Coke back. But this program has worked miracles on me, and I'm now able to regulate that with my own emotional change, with my own mind, just by creating that stillness and space in my heart. Okay, the goal. So the goal of this program, for those who don't know, the goal is to get to God. The steps are not the solution. God is the solution, and the steps are what get us there. The goal here is to build an intimate, loving relationship with our Creator, and one important way that we do that is by sitting in the stillness. The 12 and 12 says the object of meditative stillness is always the same: to improve our conscious contact with God, His grace, wisdom, and love. And I believe when we sit in that spiritual stillness, we are more likely to have a spiritual experience. For those of you who haven't had a spiritual experience, I'm going to kind of describe it here. This is Big Book 25. When, therefore, we were approached by those whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence, which we had not even dreamed of. So if you have not dreamed of that fourth dimension, that heavenly existence, it is here for you. It has come to me through working these steps, through growing in a closeness, in a connection with God. And I believe it's something we can grow deeper in. The fourth dimension is a higher level of existence. It's a higher plane. It's another level of awareness that we get to reach, and it's really profound. It's really life-giving. To continue on this passage, the great fact is just this, and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude towards life, toward our fellows, and towards God's universe, not our universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered our hearts and our lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves, right? These are things that I tried to do before. I tried to do them on my own will, and I couldn't make it happen. It was only when I surrendered to this program, I submitted to something greater than myself, and I allowed myself the opportunity to have a spiritual experience that led me to this change. Big Book, page 155. When our friend related his experience, the man agreed that no amount of willpower he might muster up could stop his drinking for long. A spiritual experience, he conceded, was absolutely necessary. Absolutely necessary, right? I had tried that willpower game. It did not work. It was only until I got into this and I sat in the stillness, I worked the steps, I did the program, I came to the understanding, I came to have a spiritual experience alongside of working this program, and that led to a psychic change. And I love that, a psychic change. This is everything about me is different. My behavior, my personality, my thoughts, my feelings, my life, my friendships, my relationship, on every level, I am a changed man because of this program. In the doctor's opinion, it talks about a psychic change. It says, on the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. The only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. And these rules are the steps. I'd like to talk quickly about my spiritual experiences, just to give reference for what that might look in your own life. It's when I sit in the stillness, when I sit in a meditative state in a prayer room or in my closet at my altar, and I pray to something greater than myself, I'm building connection. I'm building intimacy with a powerful God. I'm giving him my heart, and I'm allowing my heart to feel what he's giving me. One thing I know, when I know I have had a spiritual experience, is when there's sensations involved. And so a sensation is any sort of change, physical change in your body. So if you have tears, if you have goosebumps, if the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, if shortness of breath, anything and sensationally, that means you're having some sort of experience. And if you're engaged in that deep intimacy, that deep stillness, it's likely a spiritual one. For me, when I feel the presence of my higher power, I feel magnetic. If you've ever taken a 12-volt battery and put it to the tip of your tongue and you get that shock, right? I feel that wash over my entire body. And when I do, I come out of that moment changed. Something in me has now altered, and I'm a different man leaving that moment. I want to talk about some of the steps and stillness in regards to the steps. I'll first talk, 3, 7, and 11. These are my morning prayers and reflection. And I want to emphasize the importance of spending time with God first thing. I heard an addict say once, I can screw up my life in between the bed and the bathroom. And that means if he if he goes to the bathroom before hitting his knees, before getting in prayer, before aligning with God's will, there's a good chance he's going to pick up the drink that day. He's going to lead to anger or resentment or fear. For me, it looks, if I don't get out of bed and hit my knees and commune with God first thing, if I pick up my phone first, if I get on Reddit, social media, text some friends, my day just becomes a lot shittier. Okay. If I hit my knees, it just seems like I'm in a good place to be with him. So what I do, step 3, turning our will and our lives over to God, I hit my knees and I say the step 3 prayer. When I say this and there's no stillness created, it doesn't seem to work as well. If I'm rushed, if I wake up and I'm late, it doesn't matter if I say the prayer without that peace, that calm, that quiet, that meditative reflection that I need to get me engaged with my Creator. Same thing with step 7, asking God. Next, I ask God to remove my shortcomings, and I feel his power working when I'm still, when I get quiet. When I ask for those things to be replaced, they do, but only if I quiet my mind and my spiritual soul enough to make conscious contact with him. Step 11, it says here, Big Book, page 87. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. And that higher plane, that's that heavenly existence mentioned above. It's the 4th dimension. It's going to get us out of self-will and into God's will. It continues, in thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought or decision. We relax and take it easy. That relax, that take it easy, that's the stillness. We're not striving. We don't struggle, it says, and we're often surprised how the right answers come after we have tried this for a while. Striving is something that I've done in my life. It's paired with the self-will. It's something that overcomes me and makes me feel that I need to do this on my own, that I can't ask for a higher power's help. I don't know. Some of it is innate within me, but I'm learning to surrender. I'm learning to turn that over. And when I do, just as this promise says, I am surprised how the right answers come. Okay, step 5. So this is one of my favorites to call out for my sponsees. So after step 5, on page 75, it says, returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, carefully reviewing what we have done. We thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know him better. Yes. So I want to touch on this. We be quiet for an hour. If you're out there, if you're listening, if you're on the chat, I'd like to hear the first time you did this, the first time you sat quietly for an hour or read this instruction. Send in the chat, how long did you actually sit there? Be honest. I want an honest assessment of how long you took to reflect in your step 5. For me, it was 20 minutes. I saw the instruction. It's an exact instruction. It says be quiet for an hour, but I couldn't do it. Now, I don't want to shame us, any of us, if we've been falling short, because we seek progress, not perfection. But I wonder, what would it look like if I did do this for an hour? And playing around with some of the wordage, what would it look like if I did this for an hour each month or an hour each week? If y'all are as hardcore of an addict as I am, what would it look like if we did this for an hour each day? Could we sit in silence, in quiet for an hour each day, carefully reviewing what we have done, thanking God from the bottom of our heart for an hour each day? I think that would lead to some change in our life. Okay, step 11. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for his knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. So in essence, stillness is a form of meditation. It's in part with meditation. And I just want to touch on meditation here. Meditation in its most basic form, the equation goes like this. It's focus, distraction, focus. Okay. And the goal is not to never get distracted. We are going to get distracted. The goal is for us to recognize that we've been distracted and then get back to our focus. And each time we do this, it's like we are doing a push-up in the spiritual realm. And just like in the physical world, the more push-ups we do, the stronger we become. So the benefit to building this muscle is we'll start to recognize our distractions sooner, and we'll start to get back to our focus quicker. We'll build our attention spans, and we can focus on what we choose to focus on. In the past, I was a slave to that distraction. I was a slave to my thoughts. They controlled me. Now I control my thoughts, and my thoughts are no longer futile. Futile thoughts are thoughts that do not lead to creation. You know, we are co-creators with God. We should be having thoughts that lead to material change, to material manifestation in this physical realm. If you're not having thoughts that are creating in your future, there's something wrong there. There's something you might want to look at. Here are some practical tools that got me there. So as far as meditation goes, one of my favorites is to just meditate on these words in the big book. One of my favorites is page 419. You may know it. And acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. And so what that looks like, I'll set a timer for 20 minutes and I'll just sit there and I'll just kind of let that phrase wash over me. You know, let it just soak into my spirit, into my soul. If I'm struggling with not accepting something or someone, that's a powerful phrase that I use to overcome that. Another one is trust. Big book, page 68. I trust an infinite God rather than a finite self. And that is one that I use often because sometimes I come back to my finite self, and I think that things aren't possible because I'm the one in control. I'm the one who feels the need to strive, and I'm trusting in myself, which is finite, versus that infinite God. So when I can trust in him, when I can sit in that space and just fully comprehend what that trust of an infinite, cosmic, energetic God who does all things for me looks like, it's a powerful experience that leads to that psychic change that I was talking about above. All right, page 62. This is one of my favorites. All right, it says, he is the Father and we are his children. And he that they're referring to is God. And the next line that follows, it says, this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. Okay, so growing up Christian, I did not understand this concept. You know, I'd heard of this Father, this Heavenly Father, but I didn't relate to it. It didn't make sense to me. I couldn't understand how this old man with a cane was up in the sky, and was he really my father? I never really met him. I just was lost on that concept. But by reading the big book, by reading this line, I quickly realized that it's an act of personification. You know, before I had this line, I couldn't understand what it was like to be loved or love a cosmic energy source. But when I personified this God as my Father, I could start to feel that. I could start to understand and relate to what that might look like, because that's a concept I'm already familiar with. And it's a concept that most of us, me included, are wanting in life. You know, we want to grow in deeper intimacy with our Father. We want to love him more. We want to feel his love more. You know, a lot of that is what got us in here in the first place, right? And when we download that Heavenly Father, that spiritual Father who's looking out for us, And when we start to have the revelation of what that concept can do for us, it'll start to heal our hearts as it did mine. And I feel born again. I feel raised from the dead, so to speak. And it was really just this shift in my view. All right. Step 12, working with others. Big Book, page 94. If your talk has been sane, quiet, and full of human understanding, you have perhaps made a friend. Now, I want to argue here that we are attracted to that stillness. There's a sense of knowing, trust, and confidence in others when we see someone operating in that stillness. And this talk they're referring to, this is the talk of connecting with a potential sponsee or someone else, a newcomer in the program. And the more we get into that sane, quiet, and understanding space, that stillness, the more attractive it becomes. This is a program based on attraction, not promotion. If you're looking for more sponsees, my advice to you, if you are doing this, would be to stop promoting yourself and to continue working on yourself. Sometimes I cringe when I'm in the rooms and I hear people say, I need a sponsee. To me, that screams neediness. It's not attractive. I don't want to work with that person. But when I see someone who gives a solution-based share, who's engaged in joy, peace, and stillness, and then at the end of it, references that they're available for sponsorship, that is the kind of person I want to work with. That is attractive to me. That screams that they know what they're doing and they've able to reach this spiritual space of stillness. The program's worked for them. And therefore, I'm attracted to them. I want to work with them. Okay, to close this out, I am going to issue a challenge to you, Justin, and everyone else listening to this on the call or later. I heard someone once say in the rooms, the true measure of one's recovery is not how much sobriety time they have, or how many meetings they attend each week, or how many people they work with, but the true measure of recovery is how long they can sit quietly with their own thoughts and remain undisturbed. So, my challenge for you today, if you are up for it, I'd like you to find a quiet place to sit and turn your phone on airplane mode. Start a timer and just sit there. You don't have to meditate. You don't have to levitate. You don't have to shut off your mind completely. You just sit in the silence, in the stillness, and allow whatever is to happen, and see how long you can do this. See how long it takes before your mind tricks you into picking up your phone or switching your task, finding something else, finding another way to blot out the consciousness of your intolerable situation, as we so often do. And if you decide to do this, Justin, I believe you have a WhatsApp chat, and I hope this is okay. I'd love to, or in this chat, I guess you can't do it now. So WhatsApp chat later. Let's see. I'd love to hear how long you were able to sit in that stillness. Connect with me, connect with Justin. I want to grow in this space myself. It's something I'm actively working on, and I'd love to have fellows who are interested in this as well. So that is all I have for today. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Sean. So you, great stuff. Love it. And I posted the challenge in the chat there for everybody to do. I also put up a poll, and with the question you asked, how long did you remain quietly, honestly, when you did your step 5, stay quiet for an hour and reflect on this? I got one comment in the chat and many in the poll. So every single person in the poll said 10 minutes. And in the chat, it was 20 minutes, but it felt like, I think they said 5 hours. Yeah, 20 minutes. And I was convinced it was 5 hours. Great stuff. And I know that as you and I have talked about this here recently, I've tried that a few times, and after about 10 or 15 minutes, I'm starting to kind of buzz. So thank you for issuing that challenge. I have a couple of questions and a reminder to our live audience. If you have questions for Sean, please type them in the Q&A at the bottom of the window, and we will get to those questions as they come in. And I've written a few questions as we've gone along. So, Sean, you mentioned that you heard from somebody that said they could screw up their life between the time they got to their day between the time they got from their bed to the bathroom, and how important it is to make connection with higher power first thing. Tell us a little bit about your routine with that. I know you mentioned it a little bit, but give us a little insight into your actual routine.
Yeah, certainly. And to elaborate on that, I believe there's a spiritual principle, a spiritual concept of honor. And we see it in the physical world, but if I'm honoring someone, I'm usually allowing them to go first. If I'm honoring a woman, I'm opening the door for her and she's entering first. If I'm honoring someone on their birthday, I'm cutting the cake and then I'm giving them the first slice. So how can I honor my creator? And the way I do that is I give him the first portion of my day, right? So I literally most days roll out of bed and I hit my knees. I go into the prayer position because I've conditioned myself. My body knows when I'm in that position, it's time to connect with God. And the only time I do that position is when I'm in prayer. So over time, that conditioning grows in power. And there's a spiritual enhancement that just happens the moment I get on my hands and knees in prayer position. My body instantly knows what I'm doing. From there, I do my step 3, I do my step 7, and then I say, how can I do your will today? Something along those lines. What do you have for me today? How can I better live your will? How can I serve others? And I just kind of sit there and wait and listen. May take a minute, maybe 2. From there, I usually get up, I make coffee, and then I sit in my prayer room. It's a little closet I have, and I either read the big book or I read the big book, and I just kind of connect with my creator. I do a little journaling, a little meditation, focus on my breath, and just kind of plan out my day, asking God for direction. Sometimes I write down what I hear. I'll do a few minutes of two-way prayer. There's never a real set routine, but I know one thing I do not do is I do not take my phone into that room ever. It is not a place for distractions. The phone for me, nothing takes me further from my creator than my phone. And that the chime, the buzz, the vibrate, it's a constant distraction. And so I leave that in my bedroom and I give that time to him in honor.
I love that. And I love that you've dedicated a room, a closet to your connection with God. I also have a special place. I have a desk right over here that is my sacred place. My phone never sits on that desk. My phone, nothing but a pad of paper, a pen, a couple of candles, and earplugs. I have earplugs sitting on that desk too, so I can block out everything. I love those sacred places. They mean so much to me too. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
All right. We have a question from Dory from our live audience. Dory says, thanks so much, Sean. When it comes to acceptance, is it really necessary to have to arrive to acceptance of the situation and people, which might take time, or is it more important that I take the next right action? For example, do I have to accept that there is injustice in the world, or is it okay to not accept it, but do what I can to change it, like the next right thing? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, certainly. Well, the prayer, I believe in the word of this book, this divinely written book, and I believe the prayer says, grant me the courage to accept the things I cannot change. So if you cannot change it, then yes, you have to accept it. Otherwise, you're going to be filled with that resentment, that anger, that frustration, that disappointment, and those things are going to eat at you and take you away from your creator, take you away from where you want to be in life. Now, it doesn't happen overnight. You don't say the prayer and you just immediately accept it. Generally, what happens, it's a process of gradually accepting it. If you're not close to the form of accepting it today, ask God for the willingness to accept it at some future point in time. Ask God to say, allow me to consider accepting this once I understand more about it. Allow me to be willing to accept what you have for me, or maybe just focusing on the things that you can change. That would be a better use of your directed energy than stewing in that fear, resentment, and disappointment from not being able to accept the things you can't.
Love it. Thank you. We had a question come in asking how to join the WhatsApp group. So I put a link in the chat. Now, this link, I ask that you just keep that here and not share it with anybody else. We're trying to keep the group as spam free as possible. But if you are listening to this podcast wise or can't get the link that's in the chat, please send an email to rico12pod@gmail.com and I'll get you hooked up in the group right away that way. So rico12pod@gmail.com, get you in that WhatsApp group so we can have this discussion about quiet time, stillness, and how the process that happens as we do this. Okay, next question that came in from Greg. Greg says, hey, what daily devotional books do you use? Do you recommend any? And if so, which ones do you recommend?
What's up, Greg? Great question, my friend. Yeah, pretty. Okay, I love the Big Book. The Big Book has been my longest and most running daily devotional. I also use the Bible, the big book, as I call it. And there is another great one. It's called Jesus Calling. That one just has a really short snippets. And I always take wisdom. Basically, they kind of simplify some Bible verses and kind of put in a little daily practice, real quick, real short, always effective. There's another one for any of the codependents out there, like myself. I think it's by Melody Beattie, and it's called The Language of Letting Go. And that's a really good one if you're struggling with some of the more coda side of things. I don't turn to it as much, but I have in the past, and it's really great. So hope that helps.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. And in the show notes of the podcast, I will put links to each of these different things that different resources that we're talking about. So thanks for asking these questions. If you would like to get access to them, I'll have links in the show notes of the podcast when it goes out later today. All right. This is from an anonymous attendee, Sean. I had a relapse today and don't know how to go on. Do you have any suggestions for me?
Yes. Yeah, first I would say reach out to a fellow and kind of just share what you're going through, and get some help one-on-one from a person who can kind of talk you through, guide you through. That's the value of another person, right? Likely, if you've had a relapse, you're probably filled with a lot of lies. Right? Lies. This is not the truth. It's from the enemy. It's from that liar, that addict brain that's telling you you're no good. You're not good enough. You're not worthy. You don't deserve this. It'll never happen. These things are not the truth. And sometimes the most effective thing for me to do is reach out to another person and ask for that person to speak the truth over you. There are promises in this book that we can read over ourselves. And sometimes it takes another individual to speak that over. And I'll tell you right now, since you're asking, you are worth it. You do deserve this work. You will overcome this. The book says, in terms of relapse, it says, regard it in a different light. Maybe this will prove to be a blessing. Maybe this relapse will be the relapse you need to change for good. Maybe this is your last relapse, and it says it'll help us grow closer to God. So if you're on this call today, it's likely because you fell and now you're here to be picked up again. This is the value of the fellowship, the value of these calls. Connect with other people, get in the chat, connect with me, connect with Justin, and start having one of us speak the truth over you. After you get through that, then just get back into the work, keep doing it. Have you done the steps? Do you have a sponsee? If you haven't, then just dive into that. Do the action. It's faith without works is dead, right? You can have faith that you're going to recover, but if you're not doing the action, the steps, the work that it takes to recover, it's likely not going to happen. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much, Sean. That was comforting to me and motivating to me, and I'm sure to the person who asked that question. You're not alone. There are many here who are very happy to reach out, and in whatever fellowship you belong to, there are many who are ready and willing to to extend the hand and help you get up and say, hey, let's get back on this path and connect with God and move forward. I'm going to go back just a little bit. This is a little bit of inside baseball, a little announcement, actually. We talked a little bit about daily devotional books here, and this is a little bit of announcement. Me and one other person who is a Rico 12 regular are working together to create a daily devotional book that will be put out here in the future. And it's a Rico 12 project. We're really excited about that. It'll probably be closer to the beginning of 2024 before that comes out, but super excited about it. And as I am applying this in my own life and working it in my own life, it's making a huge difference. So good stuff on the future. Another thing Rico 12 is working on. Okay. So Sean, one of the questions I wrote as you were speaking had to do with the psychic change. One of the scariest things for me in this whole recovery process was finally coming to the point where, willingly or not, I had to say, how I am right now is a disaster, but I am so scared to let go of who I think I am, what defines me, to become something totally different. Talk us through a little bit of that process in your life and what your understanding of that entire psychic change may entail.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, the doctor's opinion says that we feel that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. So the first thing that we know is that it takes a power greater than ourselves. We can't do this on self-will or human power alone. For me, when I turned my will and life over to the care of God, he started working on me. When I started sitting in a space of stillness, I would get hit. I'd be listening to soft devotional music, and I'd start to cry. I'd start to feel his presence. I'd start to feel his love. And that was a spiritual experience. And over time, the accumulation of working these steps and the accumulation of these spiritual experiences led to a psychic change. For me, it happened, fairly slowly. Slowly for me is 3 years. So it didn't happen overnight. And when I was in the process, it felt like it wasn't happening. It felt like I wasn't changing. I was frustrated often. I felt like I was making no progress. I didn't understand it. I kept, having small relapses and getting frustrated with myself. But I stayed in this work. I stayed amongst the herd. And I kept sitting in that space with him. And through all of those things, the psychic change just came. And sometimes it takes other people pointing it out for me to recognize it. Sometimes I don't see the change that I've made in my own life, and it takes others coming to me, those who haven't seen me for a while, those who I haven't connected with. They'll say, "Wow, man, something is different about you. You've got this glow, or you've got this aura, or you seem different." And that's confirmation that doing this work is working. Hope that helps.
Yeah, and I love there's a big book reference, and I'm not an expert as to know what pages it is, but the quote is basically, when the spiritual malady is remedied, the physical and the emotional follow,
Yes.
And I love those, and I'm humbled by those times when I see somebody for the first time in a while and they say, "Holy cow, Justin, what is going on? You are different." And it's a good different. What is one time where something like that happened in your life, Sean, where you realized, wow, God really is working in me. Something in what I'm doing is really working.
Yeah, definitely. This was probably the first time that I recognized that a change was taking place. And it came by sitting in the quiet, sitting in the stillness. And I was over at my sister's house, and she, I had spit. I had, a loogie or something in my throat, and I kind of hawked it up, and I spit in her sink, in her kitchen sink. And she was sitting on the couch, and she turned and looked at me, and she said, like, "Sean, what are you doing? That's disgusting." And I wanted to react. I was so ready to react. I wanted to say, like, are you crazy? Like, you put raw chicken meat down this thing. Like, this is just, you think my spit's gonna like decontaminate your sink? That I was ready to go off. But I had been sitting in that stillness. I had been communing with him, and something just came over me, and I just took a breath. I paused and I said, if you don't want me to, I won't do it. And my sister just, she just looked at me like I was crazy. She'd never felt or seen that reaction or that response from me. She was used to seeing the reaction. And it was, I saw my change in her face. And it was a beautiful awareness. It was a beautiful moment. For me, it was very profound confirmation that what I'm doing is working.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that experience. I love that. That's something that I'm really trying to practice in my own life. When there's a stimulus that happens, when I feel attacked, disrespected, belittled, whatever, the natural response for me is to immediately get defensive and come back. And I'm really trying to take, stimulus, pause, response rather than stimulus reaction with not a millisecond in between. And it's hard. It is hard. How do you remember to do that in those moments? Is there like a trick, or is it just practice? What is your experience with that?
Well, that's the thing. It's not, for me, it's not like a memorization or remembering. It's more just the quieter my spirit and soul become, the less defensive I am. And the less defensive I am, the less I react and the more I can respond. So the more time I sit in that stillness, the more time I commune with him, when I focus on his love, acceptance, the fruits of the spirit, it just changes who I am, and there's less reaction. An easy metaphor is like, we have all these thorns. We've been so damaged, some of us, that we're covered in these rosebush thorns, right? And so someone gives us a hug or someone pats us on the back, and they hit one of those thorns, and we react and say, ouch, that hurt. Those are all the things that we've been struggling with, all of our column 4 characteristics, the self-will characteristics of fear, lust, anxiety, depression, anger, resentment. These are the things that are being triggered. And so the more we move into that God's will, humbleness, humility, forgiveness, the more we're metaphorically removing those thorns. We're healing those thorns. And now when someone comes to us and gives us a hug or pats us on the back, there's no thorn to hit, and therefore there's no reaction.
I love that metaphor, that analogy, those thorns and removing them. There's no thorn to hit when somebody comes to and pokes at it, pats us on the back in whatever manner, whether it's trying to stick a dagger in there, or whether it's hey, I really love you, and that can even cause a response. All right.
Definitely.
We have another question that just came in from Susie. I'd love to hear your take on how to know what God's will is for your life. Like, how do you differentiate God's will from you deciding to do volunteer work or whatever other good thing there is?
Yeah, definitely. Let me try to pull this up. We have a very easy test. It's called the self-will test and the God's will test. And we use this in the specific fellowship that I'm in called Spiritual Gangsters. Well, self-will, it's 4 things. You can ask yourself these 4 questions. Is it dishonest, resentful, selfish, or fearful? If you have any of these defects, you are living in self-will. It only takes one of these: dishonest, resentful, selfish, or fearful. If you have any of those, you're living in self-will. And God's will, is it honest, pure, unselfish, and loving? And you must have all 4 of these characteristics to be considered God's will. And so when I do the specific thing that I do is a two-way prayer, and I sit down and I ask God, maybe what do I need to do more of today to grow closer to you? Or how can I clean up some of my relationships from the past? Or what can I do to better serve others? And I ask these questions, and then I sit in that silence, the stillness that I'm referencing, and I have a notepad and I start writing down everything that comes to mind. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's clean my room, do some chores, call my mom, talk to my sister, whatever it may be, I put that down. And then afterward, I'm left with an accumulation of thoughts, and I go through and I use this test to filter them. And I find the ones that are honest, pure, unselfish, and loving, and I circle them. And now I know that is God's will for me today. I hope that helps.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. I love those four absolutes. Those come from the Oxford group, where many of the first AA members came out of, and my hope chip that I carry everywhere has those four absolutes on it. So I try and remember those. Love it. All right, a couple more questions have come in, and one of them, oh yes, can you repeat that? Is it pure? Is it honest, pure, loving, and unselfish? Those are the four absolutes. Thanks, Kenny, for asking that. And the next one, I heard you mention Spiritual Gangsters meetings. How do I find a meeting? So we'll put a link into that, but tell us a little bit more about the Spiritual Gangsters group, and I'll put the links in the chat and in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely. Spiritual Gangsters is great fellowship. They came out of Toronto when COVID hit. They had a really strong in-person meeting. COVID hit. They had to shut it down. This is Canada, right? And they went online. They went on Zoom, and they merged, I think, with a couple other fellowships, maybe one in LA, maybe one in New Orleans. And they just kind of created this online fellowship of people looking to recover together. I found it, and it was the first time that I had heard the solution. I was in the rooms for about 9 months, and I did not know that God was the answer. I just knew that I had a problem. I just knew that I would go to these meetings and I would talk about how I was, depressed and drinking a lot, and my life was miserable. And when I shared that, I felt a little better. It felt like, just some sort of verbal therapy. And so that was my first 9 months. And then I came into the rooms of Spiritual Gangsters, and they were spitting solution. They were spitting fire. And it just changed. Immediately, I knew I was meant to be there. Immediately, I knew that I was doing this program wrong. And it's thoroughly changed my life. So I would highly recommend going to one of their meetings. Wednesday at 6 p.m. CST is their home group. It's really fire, and people spit solution. We say you bring the mess to your sponsor and the message to the meeting. And before I'd heard that, I was bringing a lot of mess to the meetings. So.
Thank you, Sean. We have one more question, and then we'll wrap things up as we're getting close to the top of the hour here. This is from Monica. Monica says, love the webinar and your insight. Thank you. How do you recognize your ego showing up, and do you sometimes find it difficult to do the next right thing that the steps teach us?
Monica, you come in with the fastballs. Yeah. I basically, what I've learned is the first thought is usually God. The second thought may be the enemy trying to convince me out of it, talk me out of it. And the third thought is myself or my ego trying to make sense of it all. Specific example, the other day I was with a guy on a job site, and he got upset, he got angry, and he was cursing me out and telling me it was all my fault and that I had done this and I had done that. And I felt that he was overreacting, and I felt that he was very aggressive and angry, and that it wasn't my fault. Well, I left the conversation. I remained calm. I left the conversation. And the next day, I felt this push to call him and apologize. And then the next thought was, man, what am I apologizing? He was the one who yelled at me. I didn't react. I was calm. Like, why do I need to apologize? And because of the stillness and the space that I've created, I was just able to overcome that second thought. I calmly picked up my phone and I dialed it. I dialed his number. Now, as the phone's ringing, I'm praying he doesn't pick up. So my ego is still there. I'm like, I don't want to do this. Please don't pick up. Please don't pick up. Well, he picks up. And I just said, hey, I'm really sorry for yesterday. I didn't respect you or your opinions, and I apologize. I want to do better, and I left it at that. It was really basic. It was really simple. He was very receptive. He apologized as well, right? And so I recognize my ego getting in the way, but if I can continually create that space of stillness, it's much easier to hear him because he's loud. He's usually loud. He's not very still. He's pretty chaotic. And God, and when I'm in this godlike space, we're quiet, we're soft. And then the ego, it's just this chatter. It's ongoing. And so the quieter I get, the easier it is to recognize the ego because it's so loud.
Thank you for sharing so many words of wisdom. I really appreciate that, Sean. We're going to wrap this up here so we close out by the top of the hour. We do have a couple more questions that have come in. If you can stick around a little bit after we close, we can get to that. If not, please ask these questions in our WhatsApp group, our Facebook group. I put those links in there. You can also join WhatsApp by sending an email to rico12pod@gmail.com. We'll get to those questions. A challenge was issued. The challenge was how long? So the challenge is find a quiet place, put your phone on airplane mode, and set the timer and sit in silence for however long you can without blotting it out with whether it's picking up the phone to check something, whether it's I just got to move, I got to do something. Sit and let us know in the WhatsApp group. Let's start a conversation about this because it's something I really need to work on, and I'm grateful for that challenge. So remember to join in that challenge. It should be a good conversation there. If you are inspired and want to share something about your insights in a 12-step type share, please go to Rico 12 Shares. It's SpeakPipe link that I've put here in the chat. It'll be in the show notes, and record your 2 to 4 minute share there. If you've not yet rated and reviewed the podcast in Apple Podcasts, please go do so now. It's a great way to work step 12 in sharing this message with others. I invite the audience to come back next week when we will be hearing from Laura P., another first-timer on Rico 12. And I'm so grateful to have all these first-timers. It brings in a lot of really cool energy. I love it. She will be speaking on the topic of the road back. And I really look forward to that. I've heard her speak previously on a podcast called Chase the Vase. And I reached out to her based on her share on that and really excited about that. Now, let's launch off into the rest of our day with a prayer from the heart that Sean will offer. Have at it, Sean.
All right. Father, we just thank you for what you're doing in our lives. We just thank you for the way you're touching Justin's podcasts and the fellowships that we're all engaged in, and everyone on this call, everyone listening to this podcast later. We just ask for blessings and stillness to be prayed over their lives. We just ask that you come to them and reveal yourself in some sort of spiritual experience. Allow them to grow in a deeper connection, a deeper conscious contact with you, God. We just thank you for what you're doing in our lives and for all the people who have relapsed out there. We just pray that they remain hopeful, that they remain amongst the herd, that they feel loved, so that they feel connected to other fellows, and that you prove to them that you're real and that you're doing things in their lives, the things that they couldn't do themselves. We just thank you for all the wonderful things that you've done for us, addicts, AA, people in recovery in general. We're so blessed to receive your giftings, and we just ask that you contact us in a deeper way, bring us more, and we ask all these things in your name, Heavenly Father, Creator, Divine Spirit of the universe. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Sean. Remember, everybody, there is one that has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight. Still searching for glimmers of light. Feet still on the ground, I can still be found standing still.
I still can fly. I may not soar unfettered. I may not rise too high.
Recorded in the book of life and bind it with the seal